You have probably heard it said about someone, maybe about yourself. They keep to themselves. They only have a few close friends. They do not really put themselves out there. And the way it is said usually carries a quiet implication that something is missing, that a fuller social life would fix whatever invisible problem is keeping them from expanding, that the person with 3 close friends must be doing something wrong compared to the person with 30. But if you actually ask someone who keeps their circle small why they live this way, the answer almost never sounds like a limitation. It sounds like a decision, not one that was made all at once, but one that was arrived at slowly through years of observing what connection actually costs, what it actually provides, and how much of what the social world calls friendship is really just proximity wearing a name it did not earn. This is not antisocial behavior. It is not fear of rejection. It is not a wound dressed up as a preference. For many of these people, a small circle is not what they settled for when they could not build a larger one. It is what they chose after they realized that larger was not the same as better. And that realization changed how they spend their energy, who they give their trust to, and what they are willing to tolerate in the name of being liked. To understand why some people deliberately keep their social world small, you have to understand how the brain actually processes connection. Because the popular assumption is that more relationships equal more fulfillment. But neuroscience tells a very different story. Research on social cognition has consistently shown that the human brain has a limited capacity for maintaining meaningful relationships. The number that appears most often in the literature is roughly 150. That is the approximate upper limit of people a single human mind can track in terms of identity, history, emotional context, and relational dynamics. But within that number, the layers are not equal. The innermost circle, the people you would call in a genuine crisis, the ones whose pain you feel in your own body, typically holds no more than 5. Sometimes fewer. This is not a cultural preference. It is a cognitive constraint. The brain allocates a disproportionate amount of processing power to close relationships. It tracks their moods, their patterns, their needs, their reliability. It builds internal models of who they are and continuously updates those models based on every interaction. And this work is expensive, not in the way that feels effortful, in the way that operates beneath conscious awareness, quietly consuming bandwidth that might otherwise go to additional connections. People who keep their circles small are often operating in alignment with this constraint rather than against it. They have recognized, consciously or not, that the depth they want from connection requires a concentration of resources that spreading themselves across dozens of relationships would make impossible. They are not lacking in social ability. They are prioritizing signal over noise. And the signal they are listening for, genuine understanding, emotional safety, the ability to be fully known, is rare enough that most of the social world simply does not produce it. There is a specific experience that almost everyone who keeps a small circle knows intimately. The experience of being in a crowded room and feeling more alone than they do when they are actually by themselves. This is not a contradiction. It is a signal. When connection is something you experience at depth, surface interaction does not just fail to satisfy. It actively drains. Every shallow exchange requires a kind of performance, a smile calibrated to the expected warmth, a question asked not out of curiosity but out of social obligation, a laugh offered not because something was funny but because the moment required one. None of this is dishonest exactly, but none of it is real either. And the nervous system knows the difference even when the conscious mind is trying to play along. For people wired this way, the energy cost of performing connection without experiencing it is enormous. And over time, that cost teaches them something the social world rarely validates: that being around people is not the same as being with people. That a room full of acquaintances can feel emptier than an evening alone. That the loneliest version of social life is not having no one around you. It is being surrounded by people who know your name, but have never once seen who you actually are. This is why small circle people do not fear solitude the way others might expect them to. Solitude is not the absence of connection. It is the absence of pretending. And after years of measuring the difference, many of them have concluded that honest solitude is more nourishing than dishonest company. Not because they dislike people, but because their nervous systems cannot be fooled into feeling connected when the connection is not real. And this is where a very specific kind of tiredness lives. Not the tiredness of hard work or physical exertion, the tiredness of social performance, of spending an evening smiling through conversations that ask nothing real and offer nothing real in return, of driving home afterward and feeling emptier than when you arrived, of sitting in the silence of your car for a few extra minutes before going inside because the quiet feels more like company than the room you just left. People who keep their circles small know this tiredness well. And at some point, they stopped interpreting it as evidence that something was wrong with them and started interpreting it as information, as their nervous system telling them clearly and consistently that the kind of connection being offered was not the kind their system was built to receive. People who keep their circles small have almost always been taught the same lesson by experience: that trust, once broken, does not return to its original shape, and that the number of people who have earned real trust in their lives is far smaller than the number of people who have asked for it. This is not cynicism. It is pattern recognition. By the time someone has lived through enough relationships to understand how trust actually works, they have usually accumulated a catalog of experiences that the word betrayal doesn't quite capture. Not dramatic betrayals necessarily, subtler ones. The friend who shared something private when it became socially convenient. The person who was reliable in good times and invisible in difficult ones. The relationship that felt equal until the moment it required sacrifice and revealed that the balance had always been an illusion. These experiences do not make a person bitter, but they do make a person careful. And that care, once it takes root in the nervous system, becomes a filter through which every new relationship must pass. Not a wall, a filter. There is an important distinction. A wall keeps everyone out indiscriminately. A filter lets people in selectively based on demonstrated evidence rather than presented intention. People who keep their circles small are not refusing connection. They are requiring proof before granting access to the parts of themselves that previous experience taught them to protect. And this is where the misunderstanding lives. Because from the outside, that filter looks like coldness. It looks like judgment. It looks like someone who thinks they are too good for the rest of the room. But from the inside, it feels like the opposite. It feels like the hard-won recognition that your inner world is not a public space. That access to your vulnerability is not owed to anyone simply because they showed up. That the most valuable thing you have to offer another person is your unguarded self. And that giving it away to people who haven't earned it is not generosity. It is self-neglect. What people rarely see is that behind the filter lives one of the most loyal and generous forms of love a person can offer. Because the same system that is slow to let people in is fiercely committed to the people it has already accepted. When someone passes through that filter, They do not receive a casual version of friendship. They receive the full weight of a person who does not distribute their attention widely, but delivers it completely. The calls get returned. The details get remembered. The difficult moments get met with presence instead of platitudes. The relationship is tended to with a seriousness that lighter social styles rarely sustain. This is the trade-off that the outside world does not see. Fewer people receive their care, but those who do receive a version of it that most people will never experience. One of the defining characteristics of people with small circles is how they listen. Because listening, for them, is not a social courtesy. It is a form of investment, and they do not invest casually. When someone inside their circle speaks, they do not just hear the words, they hear the weight behind them. They track the shift in tone. They notice what is being said and what is being carefully avoided. They hold the conversation not just in the moment but across time, remembering what was shared last month, recognizing when something has changed, understanding the context that the speaker may not even realize they are communicating. This is not a skill they developed intentionally. It is what happens when the brain's relational processing power is concentrated on a few people instead of distributed across many. But this depth of listening has a cost. It creates an asymmetry that most people in their lives will never fully appreciate, because the person with the small circle is often listening at a depth that others are not returning. They remember what you said 3 weeks ago. They noticed when your energy shifted. They sensed the thing you did not say, and they carry that awareness quietly, adjusting their behavior, choosing their words, holding space in ways that are invisible, precisely because they are done so well. This asymmetry is one of the reasons small circle people can feel exhausted by relationships that others would consider easy. They are not doing the same amount of relational work as everyone else. They are doing more, significantly more. And because that work is silent and internal, it is almost never acknowledged. The people closest to them receive a quality of attention that is rare and irreplaceable. And they often do not realize what they have until they experience the contrast of connection with someone who listens at the surface. People who keep their circles small are frequently described as hard to get to know. And that description is accurate but incomplete, because it implies that the difficulty is a flaw, something obstructing the natural flow of connection, something that should be overcome or fixed. But for the person on the inside of that difficulty, it does not feel like obstruction. It feels like intention. They are not hard to know because they are hiding. They are hard to know because they reveal themselves slowly and deliberately. Each layer of self that they offer is offered after observation, after testing, after the quiet accumulation of evidence that the person receiving it will treat it with care. This is not a game. It is not manipulation. It is the behavioral expression of a nervous system that learned, probably early and probably through experience, that vulnerability without safety is not intimacy. It is exposure. And exposure for people wired this way does not feel brave. It feels reckless. Not because they are cowardly, but because they understand something that more open people sometimes learn too late. That the parts of yourself you share become the parts of yourself others can use. And the only protection against that is discernment, choosing carefully, observing patiently, and allowing trust to build at the pace that truth requires rather than the pace that social convention demands. This is why their friendships, once formed, tend to be unusually stable, not because conflict is absent, but because the foundation was tested before anything was built on it. The people who made it through the filter did not arrive easily. They arrived through consistency, through patience, through the willingness to be present without demanding access. And those bonds, forged slowly in the quiet space between performance and authenticity, carry a durability that faster connections rarely achieve. And there is something else about these friendships that is easy to miss from the outside. They tend to be remarkably honest, not harsh, not blunt for the sake of being blunt, but honest in the way that only becomes possible when both people know the relationship can survive the truth. When someone has earned their way into a small circle, the pretense drops entirely. Conversations go to places that most social interactions never reach. Vulnerabilities are shared without packaging. Opinions are offered without diplomatic softening. The friendship becomes a space where both people can exist as they actually are, rather than as they present themselves to the wider world. And that honesty, that mutual willingness to be seen without performance, is what makes these bonds feel so different from the connections that form quickly and dissolve just as fast. There is something that people with small circles know that the wider social world often misses. That the quality of your solitude determines the quality of your relationships. Because a person who cannot be alone with themselves will use other people to escape that discomfort. And a relationship built on escape is not connection. It is dependency wearing a more acceptable name. People who keep their circles small have usually developed a deep and functional relationship with their own company. Not because they prefer themselves to everyone else, but because they have invested enough time in solitude to understand their own patterns, their own triggers, their own needs, and their own capacity for honesty. They know what they feel before they need someone else to name it. They know what they want before they need someone else to suggest it. They arrive in relationships not as empty vessels looking to be filled, but as complete people looking to share what is already full. And this fullness is not arrogance, it is maintenance. It is the result of hours and years spent sitting with their own discomfort instead of reaching for another person to relieve it. Processing their own emotions instead of outsourcing that processing to a friend or partner. Making decisions from their own center instead of polling the room for permission. This internal work is invisible from the outside. No one sees it happening. No one applauds it. But it is the reason that when these people do show up in a relationship, they show up differently. They bring a self that has been tended to, a self that is not hungry in the way that consumes another person's energy, but present in the way that adds to it. This is why their presence in a relationship often feels different, steadier, less reactive, less needy in the way that can suffocate without intending to. They do not require constant contact to feel secure. They do not interpret silence as rejection. They do not measure the health of a bond by how frequently it is maintained, but by how honestly it functions when it is. And that steadiness, that ability to hold connection without gripping it, comes directly from the solitude they have learned to inhabit rather than fear. This is not a story about people who failed at social life and made the best of what was left. It is a story about people who looked at what the social world was offering and made a conscious decision about what they were willing to accept. They did not shrink their circles out of fear. They refined them out of clarity. They did not lose friends because they could not keep them. They released connections that required them to be less than they are in order to be welcome. If you recognize yourself here, there is nothing broken in your approach to the world. The smallness of your circle is not a measure of your worth. It is a measure of your standards. And those standards are not keeping you from connection. They are ensuring that the connection you do experience is real enough to justify what it asks of you. You did not arrive at this way of living because you could not handle more people. You arrived here because you understood, before most people do, that more is not the same as enough. And that enough, when it is real, is more than most people ever find. And if you know someone like this, if there is a person in your life who lets very few people in, and you happen to be one of them, understand what that means. It means you passed a filter that most people never even encounter. It means the version of themselves they show you is the version they protect most carefully. It means the space they made for you in their life was not given freely. It was earned by something you did that they may never fully explain, but will never forget. That kind of place in someone's life is not common. And the fact that you hold it says something about you that no amount of social popularity could ever replicate. If this gave language to something you have always carried but never quite heard described, you are not alone in it. This channel is a place for the psychological patterns that shape us quietly, the ones most people feel but few people name. If this meant something to you, consider subscribing so these conversations keep finding you. And if you want to, leave a word in the comments. Not an explanation, just a recognition. Because sometimes being seen is enough. Thank you for watching.